Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Lunchtime Hour series with Jose and myself, episode 14. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it, Neil. And good morning or good afternoon at your end, right?
Yeah, good evening for some others here from the other
And
side of the world.
yeah, and hello to everybody watching. And like always, appreciate the support. I mean, we got Greg, we have Lucas, TC, Shampas, Mahesh, Jacob, and the list goes on and on GSR. So appreciate the support. And pretty interesting day in the market. And usually I use the word interesting, Neil, when it's red. So it's very interesting for us tech players, right?
Yeah, apparently tech is not in favor anymore, right? I mean, I'll show the heat map real quick. Tech is out of favor. So I guess, like you said, before we went live, we can go back to sticks and stones because
Yeah.
clearly tech is not that great. Finance is fine, health is fine, consumer and non-durables, all of them are doing quite well. And it was the same thing on Tuesday. So quite interesting, the market sentiment right now. Because I mean, you would think that if consumer sentiment is bad, if we might be going into a recession or whatever, you would assume that a lot of these sectors would also take a hit, but apparently not.
Yeah. I know, Neil, I haven't really read too much, but I kind of was just scrolling through X and I saw that there might have been some more tariffs announced to China. Or just some more pushing that. Again, I'm not too familiar, but I wonder if that might be one of the reasons we're seeing kind of the tech market a little bit more down or compared to everything else. I mean, everything else seems great.
Yeah, no, it's the same tariffs as before, like the one that got pushed back, Canada, Mexico, and China. It's the same as before. Just now, apparently, he said that they are going to get implemented, I believe, in March or in April or something like that. So yeah, that might be impacting the market, but
Yeah. Here, Greg kind of says I do agree. Nvidia's had great earnings, and we can talk about that in a bit. But it seems like it's more just global tariffs policy and a lot of kind of just macro and random stuff happening all over the world.
yeah,
And
no, I
just quick,
agree.
Seth, it's an AI screen. I don't even know what it is behind me. So this is an AI background.
What?
Don't tell anybody. Do not tell anybody. That's the secret that us and the viewers right now will know forever.
I thought this was your $1 million studio.
No, I actually have a $2 million studio,
Ooh.
Neil, but it's just, I didn't want to show off too much. So I had to like bring it down a little.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's sneaky.
um, but yeah, Neil, I mean, I think we could talk about Nvidia in a bit, but I actually like this question a lot from Wahid. Um, at these levels, I think for both shareholders of AMD and Google, if you were to pick one, Neil, which would it be right now?
Yeah, it's funny because someone sent me a message. Um, did you buy the dip in the last couple of days? And these were the two names that I sent him. So would you buy more AMD and Google? I did buy more AMD and Google.
Yes.
Um, so I don't know if I had to choose one.
Yeah.
Very difficult, but maybe AMD just because well the upside can still be huge after the big hit that it took since I mean not since the 200 and something dollars because again I don't think it should have been above 200 but even from the 150s or something like that I think AMD surprises in the back half of the year
Mhm.
from a business standpoint and then of course the stock will follow.
Yeah. Wahid, same. I think I haven't been buying anything recently, not for any real reason. It's just we talked about it, but a lot of the stocks that I want to buy, I've been talking about lately, and normally I can't buy if I talk about them in a sponsor video. But I would be buying. I think I would buy Neil Google over AMD right now, and
Hmm.
not just. It's not because I believe it one is better than the other. It's just because of my portfolio allocation already. I already do have AMD is depending on the day, either two or three in my overall portfolio. And I think Google is closer to like that seven or eight. So I wouldn't mind making Google kind of a lot higher in my portfolio and making a meaningful weight. So I would just be both. I think are attractive, but I would just be buying Google to increase my exposure in it.
Yeah, maybe I'll put a plus one on that because AMD is a smaller position for me than Google.
Mhm. Let's see, Neil. Any questions you might want to talk about?
It's not a question; it's a comment that I get a lot, especially under an AMD videos. Like you never know what the bottom is going to be, and I keep saying the same thing. To me, I don't care about finding the bottoms when I see good companies trading at good prices. Like if we because I started buying 107, then I went to 110, and and now we're at 102, 103. If we go lower, that just means I can buy more shares of a company that I like at a better price. Like to me, at 110, good price to buy the business. Like I'm looking at the business, not the technical analysis or whatnot. The business is a good price to pay for it at 110. So of course, it depends what company you're buying. Yeah, maybe there is a company that clearly is in a downtrend and the business itself is in a downtrend. But as we've seen with AMD, the business is in the uptrend and it's actually going to accelerate in the next couple of months.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I know some people like, I can definitely see some people like waiting for a bottom and maybe a turnaround story happening before buying. I don't think there's ever a wrong choice. I just try to do the least amount of thinking that I can. Um, as I feel the less active you are in your portfolio, the less stressed you are. For example, Neil, I mean, Nvidia had great earnings yesterday. I did my D&D on it. I didn't really care much about the stock price. This morning, I woke up. I went to the gym. Then I went and took my little one to the park. And just right now is the first time I'm seeing Nvidia actually down 3% for the day. So it's like I could care less in the short term of things. In the long term of things, I believe sometimes you might get in a little early in forms of prices and you might kind of have to ride the short term. But in the long term of things, this style has really made a lot of money. I'm pretty sure I bought Nvidia back then when it was in the cycle and before it bottomed out. But here we are in a new cycle, much higher than it was before.
Yeah, and maybe Nvidia is the new Intel. Who knows, right? Because I mean, the stock has done basically nothing in the last I don't know 9 months or something like that. So yeah, truly a garbage company. The
And
next
this is
waste
what
management.
this is what gets too crazy right now. It's like I feel Nvidia is going to become unpopular for some time because it's not going to give us returns. Right? People are saying the past 9 months it hasn't done anything, and then out of nowhere it's going to shoot up, and everybody's going to be like, I missed it. Why did I miss it? And it's because everybody's trying to time that market, right? So I like these thoughts right now of everybody kind of hating on Nvidia. because I think that breakout is going to be happening. And I mean, earnings yesterday, I think were amazing, Neil. I In the past earnings, I've never felt like the next quarter was going to be anything crazy. Like I felt like there was going to be growth, right? I believe that bullish case. But for some reason, Neil, this earnings and the guidance that they gave, the guidance wasn't much. But the reason um they mentioned that they're really trying to accelerate their supply chain line on the Blackwell platform. I believe they are completely sandbagging their numbers. And if I was to ever pick a quarter that would be a crazy quarter for them, I think it's going to be 3 months from now. And I don't think I've ever said that. I don't think I've ever said that there was a quarter I was really excited about. This is, I'm really, really excited for the next 3 months for the Blackwell platform.
Yeah, I'm trying to find um, the quarterly trend that I put on Canva. Here it is, so I can share that. Um, because it was a very good quarter. Hopefully everybody can see this. So we did see a jump of close to $5 billion quarter over quarter in data center, um, which is pretty good. The total revenue did also jump a little bit above $4 billion here. So yeah, I mean, in my opinion, this was another very good quarter. Like you said, I think I've put it. Where is it? They said this, like they delivered already $11 billion of Blackwell architecture revenue in the fourth quarter, which is insane. It's like incredible. Um, and then look at this free cash flow. Free cash flow
Yeah.
basically more than doubled. And like we're not talking about $1 billion in free cash flow going to $2 billion. We're talking about 26.9 to over $60 billion like in 12 months. It's insane. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Now it provides more free cash flow than Amazon. It provides more free cash flow than Meta platforms. I think that's insane. The only two companies that provide now more free cash flow on a trailing 12-month basis are Microsoft and Google. And both of them are about not Microsoft, not Microsoft, sorry, Apple and Google, I believe, are the only two players that provide better free cash flow than Nvidia right now. And it's only by about 8 billion. I'm going to make a wild guess, Neil, um, or that Nvidia becomes the number one free cash flow in 2025. It's going to produce way more free cash flow than Apple. Is going to produce more free cash flow than Google this by the end of the next 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw the analyst estimates for, I think, fiscal 27. They're expected to generate $122 billion in free cash flow, which is crazy. Like, this is just free cash flow. You can put 100 companies that are trading on the NASDAQ together. They don't even generate that much in revenue.
And I think that, Neil, is the main reason this company is going to be so. If you thought Nvidia had a competitive lead against all these players, with that amount of free cash flow, Neil, I think that competitive lead is gonna increase dramatically. Um, there are reports that they have about 4 to 5 teams working on different chips. I think
Mm-hmm.
those numbers are gonna grow. I think Jensen during the earnings call even really kind of talked about the ASIC market. There was a Q&A session there, and he was pretty much like, hey, look, yeah, the ASICs are pretty cool, but at the end of the day, businesses are going to need to make a business decision at the end, because, right, there's only limited amount of real estate for data centers. You only have limited amount of power. And if you have limited amount of power, sure, I spent about $1 or $2 billion developing my own AI chip. But what would be my revenue loss if I create this chip right now and build the data center here instead of an Nvidia chip? Am I better off just losing that $2 billion in research and development because I'll be able to make more money with Nvidia chips? And I think the answer is yes. They would rather. I mean, for example, Meta Platforms had a chip called the MTAI. That one never went to full production. They've used it here and there. I think they're moving into a second generation. But we'll see. Microsoft had another AI chip as well. Theirs never went to production. They're still mega big customers of NVIDIA. And it's because NVIDIA continues to lead that lead. So I think this ASIC race or big tech investing in their own chips is, to some extent, maybe a fool's errand right now.
I mean, they basically said this, right? About custom chips. Like, just because a chip is designed does not mean it will be deployed. It's all about the software ecosystem, the developer base that Nvidia has, and that's their huge advantage. So it makes sense. I mean, we've been talking about that. A lot of the big tech companies, yeah, they do design their own chips, but most of it is just for internal workloads, while they're still buying quite a lot from Nvidia, from AMD. Were you also surprised when you heard this, that Blackwell was architecture for reasoning AI inference, like that they basically made that step already from
Yeah,
training to inference?
I don't know if Jensen is just a genius, Neil, or the luckiest man alive. Because Blackwell did actually come out at the perfect time of this this um, thinking model, right? The time scaling model, where it's pretty much just heavy inferencing. And we saw Blackwell. They've talked about it before, how it was 25% better in inferencing than the Hopper platform. So, and yesterday he kind of mentioned that he architect this Blackwell expecting this to happen. I don't know how true that is. If it is true, he's a genius. If not, Lady Luck is definitely on their side, because Blackwell is the biggest moat for inferencing right now. The ability to connect 72 GPUs and act as one, make this the massive, the best TCO in the inference space. You hear a lot about these other companies like Cerebras and so the other AI chips. They're not in big data centers and building the architecture, the types of servers, because they are just not able for that system integration. So, I mean, I'm excited for Rubin. I don't think we're going to see much growth from the Blackwell Ultra to the Blackwell. It's just going to be like a little bit more memory here, a little bit more cores here. But then Rubin platform, which is the next generation, um, I wonder where that NVL link is going to go. Is it going to grow from here? Because originally it was NVL8. You were able to have 8 Hopper GPUs connected together. This Blackwell is the max is 72. And that helps dramatically for inference. Where is it going to go from Rubin? Is the Rubin, are we going to be in like some in the 100s, 500s, 1000s? This would completely increase the moat of NVIDIA in both training and inference.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised at the fact that they are trying to move so fast between each and every product? Like, a bit like, not it's not apples to apples with performance, but a bit like AMD going from MI 300 to 225, 250, and then next year 400.
I mean, Jensen mentioned it was an annual cadence, right, Neil? So I believed him in that. I actually was surprised though, where he mentioned that yes, we kind of had that Blackwell delay about 3 months, or I
Hmm.
forget how many. I don't know if he actually gave a few. He said a few months of delay in Blackwell, and he said just because we had delays in Blackwell is not going to stop the train. The Blackwell Ultra is still on schedule for the second half of this year. So the only real competitor for Nvidia right now is Nvidia, um, and the Blackwell, for me, for them to say, "Hey, look, we saw a delay in our Blackwell. Maybe we'll push out our Blackwell Ultra by a month or two." Because they didn't do that, I actually got a lot more respect for NVIDIA's. Not that I didn't have it, but it just showcases that the engineering team just has one goal: to innovate and produce better products on this yearly cadence, and they're not going to stop.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be quite interesting because AMD is also moving right quite quickly.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that the fact that Blackwell is going to be such a beast in inference, do you think that hurts a company like AMD? Because previously, right, in the last couple of weeks, actually since that Meta announcement between Meta and AMD, everybody's been talking about, oh, AMD is going to dominate inference. But do you think this changes anything?
From, I mean, I think it might change that general thought, Neil. I've never if one watches my videos, I have never said that AMD was going to take market share from NVIDIA. And I didn't think that this DeepSeek was going to push more to AMD than to NVIDIA. What I believe for AMD's AI accelerator is this market is evolving at such rapid levels, Neil. It is definitely moving. The wallet spending is growing, and unfortunately, there's not enough capacity for for Nvidia to be able to provide to the whole market. And because there's not enough capacity, I think players are going to say, "Hey, look, yes, AMD software might be worse than Nvidia's, and there might be a little bit more friction of adoption, but I need that compute power. And I can't wait for the Blackwell. I can't wait for all these other products out there. I have to get what I can right now. So the market share expanding for AMD is the biggest thing. And if they do provide better TCO, not if they improve their TCO, if they improve their software and try to reduce that friction to jump, it would be good. But at the moment, I don't see AMD taking market share. I just see them growing with market wallet. And in a growing market like this AI space, even if you don't take market share, you can still grow your numbers dramatically. And the great thing is AMD only did what, $5 billion last year. If this market is growing dramatically and you get another 3 billion, 4 billion this year, that's nearly 100% year over year growth. And those numbers can really change the bottom line and the top line. And in forms of valuations to growth opportunity, I really do enjoy AMD. But I will not say that AMD is going to take market share from Nvidia.
Yeah, fair enough. Plus, remember, we're only talking here about AI revenue. When we talk about this for AMD, AMD has all the other segment, like all the other. They still have CPUs, they still have gaming, they still have embedded, and those things should turn into tailwinds in the second half of this year. So don't forget to remember that side of the business. But of course, the whole focus is on that data center,
Yeah.
that AI revenue.
I, I, It, I actually think, and I sorry, I saw this thing from Matthew. Nvidia and Broadcom together is like owning every chip maker on market on Earth. I would say, Neil, if there was a company that I would be worried about more, it would be for if AMD continues to innovate at faster levels and they are a way cheaper product than Nvidia. I would be more worried about Marvell and Broadcom, as these other tech players are going to say, hey, look, it might be cheaper to buy maybe more AMD chips than focus on my own chips. So I think maybe if an AMD continues to dominate or improve dramatically, I would say Broadcom and Marvell might be the ones that one should worry about a little bit more.
And this is probably why Lisa Su talks a bit more every single quarter about custom chips, right? I think like in the last couple of quarters, if we do a quick search through the transcript, I think she mentions it a little bit more. Like it is an option. We know it's an option for us. If we want, we will probably focus a bit more on that in the future. Last thing here, was this surprising to you that the Nvidia automotive vertical revenue is expected to grow to around $5 billion this fiscal year? Because that has been a segment where, let me see, it's this the purple line, which is quite small here. It's a small part of the overall revenue, but if we get to $5 billion this fiscal year and it continues to grow, I mean, again, this is another growth driver for the company. It's not just automotive, also robotics, and they basically say that most, if not all, AV players, robotics players are building on top of the NVIDIA platform. So yeah, I mean, again, another reason to own NVIDIA.
Neil, I have to re-listen to the earnings call because the way I understood that segment, Neil, is sometimes they kind of break down how much the clouding revenue is per segment. So I wonder if that 5 billion was more for the clouding aspects, which would fall on kind of the data center revenue and not the automotive revenue, kind of which is their Thor chip, and I forget the other ones, Orion chips and so on. So I have to re-listen to the call, Neil, from my, again, initial listening. I thought they were more talking about the data center in forms of what companies are using these cloud solutions for. About $5 billion of that will now be automotive. So that's how I understood it, but I'm going to have to, let's see. Yeah, so it says one of the early largest robot applications is developing NVIDIA into data center, the car or both. Um, oh wow. Okay, so I wonder if someone, because again they talk about the data center at the beginning there, so I'm not sure if they're talking about kind of Blackwell revenue going into the data centers and being used for automotive segment, because that's what they've done in the past. I think historically they mentioned it's about been a $3 to $4 billion business annually, but now it also reads that it could be the automotive segment. And do you have the total? I haven't looked at the numbers. Let me pull it up. What is the fiscal year um automotive segment? It was I can't see the number there. For this fiscal year, it was about $1.7 billion. Um, so from one point, I don't know. That would be a huge growth. That's almost
That
a
would,
three
yeah.
x growth, a 3x growth. So if it is, that would be crazy. But I don't know why, Neon. I think they might have been more talking about kind of the way the data center clouds are being used. Because sometimes they even talk about the medical market, and the medical market is also like a multi-billion-dollar revenue annually for them in the data center space with directly or indirect purchasing.
Yeah, because I mean the tricky part here is, of course, is this like Nvidia's automotive vertical revenue. So could include various things there. You're right. Sneaky, Jensen.
But I mean, Neil, if there was one market that I believe eventually could grow to a very multi-billion-dollar revenue, I think it would be the automotive segment. Like you mentioned, it focuses on the robotic space as well. So if there was one that could maybe not be the next data center, but be bigger than gaming and be a good portion of total revenue, I think it would be the automotive segment.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean robotics is probably going to be quite big as well. Um, do Did you hear anything about the memory side of things, like something that could affect Micron positively, negatively on last night's earnings call? I know they use a microphone from Timu during their earnings call, but did you hear anything about? Because I don't think I heard anything other than like indirect comments that could definitely positively affect a player like SK Hynix and Micron.
I think the only thing, Neil, that I heard is NVIDIA really seems like they're ramping up their supply chain this quarter and next quarter. It seems like I don't know if they got this massive amount of capacity that came out of nowhere. I don't know if TSMC, this is why I'm very excited about this upcoming quarter, Neil. The way they made it seem is they are just trying to build as quickly as possible. So even if it means they might mess up on margins right now, they're just going to build as many Blackwell chips as they can. And that in the long term of things will be really good for Micron, because Micron, for those that are not familiar, HBM, Neil, is actually one of the biggest costs for NVIDIA. So if you're kind of seeing a really strong margin hit, I wonder if maybe one of these Micron memory players just got a huge amount of capacity. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Samsung, maybe just finally joined the game as well. But if there was a reason for gross margins to drop down so much, it means to me that there is some component that is heavy that is heavy in margin compression that they're going to be buying a lot more of. And the only one that I can think of right now is the memory products. So in that could definitely be seen as bullish for the memory space. Now the question is Micron increasing their capacity? Is SK Hynix increasing their capacity? Are both increasing their capacity? Or is Samsung finally here in the game? But I think if Samsung was, we would have heard it from Samsung. They would have probably tried to share a little bit more about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely SK Hynix and Micron. We know that Micron is expanding more, building more in the United States to meet that demand. So yeah, they told us like although revenue for the full quarter is going to be what 7.9 billion, I think they projected, which was $1 billion miss. HBM they said continues to do quite well and should grow quite rapidly. So yeah, it could be a very interesting couple of quarters ahead of us. Because again, Micron memory, HBM is of extreme importance. And if NVIDIA is willing to take a margin hit for them to expand more rapidly, that should be good news for the memory players.
And then Jeffrey kind of mentioned another thing. Other than margins, NVIDIA's report was pretty good. I want to say, Neil, there were two things that maybe I think investors might not be liking outside of margins. The first thing, Neil, is the uncertainty. I think Jeffrey actually breaks it down in a bit, but oops, sorry. The uncertainty of tariffs, I think, is creating a little bit more volatility in the stock. And if Nvidia's already kind of in the low 70s, I think their guidance was about 70.6 on gap and about 71 on non-gap. So if we're already that close, Neil, to 70%, can tariffs push us below that 70 and we actually be in the high 60s? Now, that's not bad, but the market would perceive it as really, really bad, right? I mean, a high 60s is still pretty impressive during kind of a tariff time. So I think that uncertainty um, is creating some negative thought pressures for Nvidia. And then there was no real reconfirmation of if there's any more export restrictions that are going to come out with the administration. Are we going to stop selling the H20 to China? So I think those three things: margins, tariffs, and export restrictions to China, are creating some fears. I think in the short term, they can definitely move the stock. In the long term, I believe nothing to really worry about.
No, well said. Agreed. I mean, they did say that the China revenue as a percent is going to stay the same thing, so it's not getting worse. Of course, it's not getting better either, but at least there is that. So it's probably more macro related right now, right? Consumer sentiment, tariffs, exports control, etc., etc. Because if this was any other company that reported these kinds of numbers, stock would have been up quite quite significantly. So apologies on my mistake of the prediction video 2 days ago. I thought this stock was going to surge, but I guess not. I guess not. So this is my fault. This -3%, plus their own fault because they suck at buying microphones.
Neil, so here in the second quarter of 2025, Nvidia's free cash flow decreased from 14.9 billion in the first quarter to, I'm not sure what quarters you're talking about, Mark. If you're talking about second quarter of 2025, first quarter, I haven't really looked at those numbers. The only thing is, um, in free cash flow, obviously, if the company spent a lot more money on, I know, for example, this quarter, quarter four, we saw a decrease in cash flow, I guess, from last quarter, Neo. And my thought process is they're spending, excuse me, a lot more money on some of the manufacturing stuff. With the we've kind of seen a hit in gross margins. So if there was a hit in gross margins, then that means that some products might have gotten more expensive, right? You might have seen something in the supply chain got more expensive. So it just tells. I don't think it's any. It's just it follows through with the margin numbers that we're seeing.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think he was talking about maybe a couple of quarters ago, because this quarter, yes, it's down $1 billion or so, but we know why. Like this is also why margin got hit. So I mean, still quite good, right? They went from $11.2 billion same quarter last year to now $15.5 billion. So all in all, quite good. Taking a small margin hit to grow quicker is, in my opinion, a good thing, especially as they prepare themselves to exit 2025 in a very good position to launch Rubin after that.
Neil, I haven't really followed this one much, but I think have you done the video since they reported their numbers? I think we made the perfect guess that it was going to be a buzzer beater, um, and they did. I think it was like after the market closed where they reported some kind of filings. I'm hearing from just the chat here that the filing might not have been as perfect as many might have expected. So, any thoughts here, Neil?
Yeah, so I did a quick reaction video after they did beat the buzzer, but yeah, essentially they filed the 10K, the 10Qs that were missing, so they're not getting delisted, but that's fine. So you have that delisting risk that is gone. But in the filings, they basically say that, well, there were issues, and those issues still exist, but we're working on making sure that these issues won't exist in the future anymore. Which is quite strange, and which is probably why we haven't seen the stock like really explode. Because what have they been doing since August? Like the filings is one thing, like the missing 10K, 10Q. Of course, you have to wait for the auditor for him to sign off, etc., etc. But the issues inside the company, this could have been done already in the last 8 months or so. So that's probably why Wall Street is still not that happy, because essentially, other than them filing on time, let's say on time, couple of hours before the deadline, nothing much has changed. Like the issue still exists.
All right. No, yeah, definitely have to look at that one. Um, Again, this week has been at Nvidia just thoughts for me. Now this is afterthoughts. Um, and then eventually I get back to the market. Um, Neil, thoughts here. So Michael, um, do you think Google's search mode could ultimately help it win the AI race? I don't know if Google search would be it to me, Neil. I think it's YouTube. You know, I think YouTube with, I I think eventually we're going to go into models that are really going to be crucial to how things happen. I mean, we have Cosmo and all this that are really good for physical AI. But I mean, YouTube, you can just search cars driving or anything, and you can probably learn a lot from those solutions. So they have this massive video data set that can actually be organized pretty good because obviously you have the titles of all these videos. Dancing, for example, let's say you want to teach a robot how to dance. Well, you have plenty of videos on YouTube of YouTube Shorts of someone doing dancing and seeing how the human body moves. So I think if I was to pick something, I think it would be more YouTube. That is a bigger moat for Google to win in the AI race. But I think another player here are all the social media companies. They kind of like Meta platforms with their with their video base and text base. I think it's not a sure win thing. But I think Meta and Google have a lot of data that they can use.
No, agreed. Agreed. By the way, shout out to Amit. He popped up in our chat here. Um, no, I agree. I think, I mean, like you said, all the videos on YouTube are basically already tagged for them to basically use and train. Actually, to use and train, I think you had to agree on certain things for YouTube to be used, like AI related stuff. But search mode, I mean, yeah, maybe it definitely helps them with like the circle to search, image searching, and all of that. But what definitely could help them win the AI race is their TPUs, right? The fact that they've been working on that for many years. Um, it's all about driving costs down, and I think cost wise, they're one of the best out there. So yeah, I think, I mean, we both own Alphabet. We both believe it's quite cheap, and there is always that risk, right? That you have to keep in mind about the fact that, yeah, what if all search switches to LLM, to chatbots, and not to Google.com, for example? Um, that could definitely hurt their cash cow, which is advertising, search advertising. But until we reach that, I think we will see that in the numbers. And so far, the numbers don't show me anything, any cracks in that business.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely one of the things that we're gonna get tighter, are gonna get more fought upon by these big tech players. Maybe at the beginning, it's like, hey, look, we're just evolving. But as I think we continue to evolve in this space, I think a lot of these companies are going to be fighting to make sure that no one's using their data to train. So it's definitely going to be crazy in the upcoming years with big tech players trying to make sure no one else is using their products.
Yeah, I mean, lots of licensing agreements, I think, will happen. We've seen that with Reddit, for example. Um, but yeah, Google has Google search, and then they have also the number two search, which is basically YouTube. So yes.
Shout out. It's a shout out to the AJN ticker or JAN or Naj.
Onage.
Do. Let's see. What else do we have? Anything else, Neil? I mean, here. Do you mind giving an update, Melvin? Do you mind giving an update on AMD? I think we're both still very bullish on this company. Right, Neil?
No,
I no.
absolute money destroyer.
I, I, I want to say, I don't think anything from Nvidia. I wonder if Melvin's just curious if anything that Nvidia said might cause one to be a little bit more bearish in in that company. I don't think so. Like I mentioned, I think we're seeing this overall market evolving at rapid levels. Um, and while right now AMD is lagging, their products have done amazing. I've actually was just looking at reviews, Neil, for one of their consumer GPUs. And
Hmm.
AMD, one thing that I hear a lot of complaints is their their naming scheme. So they have kind of like this new AI something Max something CPU. And I'm seeing that it's one of the best products out there. There was even one YouTuber who kind of mentioned that in forms of like top technologies for the consumer CPU. He said that one of them was when AMD released Ryzen because it was great for kind of competition. Then another one was the AMD, not AMD, the when Apple released their M line. And he says that he believes this new CPU that AMD just announced. Again, it's a CPU, but it's running games at 1080p without a discrete GPU, and it's running it at great levels and it's at cheap price. So he believes this is going to be one of the AMD's kind of great products that can lead them to get more market share. So sorry to say that for Intel, but
Hmm. Yeah. But no, you're basically repeating what I told you last week, and this was from Dave 2D, his review on
oh,
that
you were
laptop.
talking. I didn't know if it was that. Was it that one? I'm like, I feel
It
like I've
was
heard of
that
this
one, yeah.
before.
I'm like, I'm listening to him, to you telling me this story. I'm like, wait a second, I know that story from somewhere.
I was trying to. I'm looking for a new laptop, so I was just looking at some YouTube reviews, and for some reason, even though I'm looking for one with a discrete GPU, but that one keeps coming up.
Yeah. No, it was a great review, and actually it gives AMD huge opportunities for the future. And by the way, here was Lisa Su's last tweet on X, talking about the Radeon RX 9000 series. Apparently tomorrow there is something coming out. Like, tune in tomorrow for all the details. So I guess they've got something cooking there in the background.
Yeah, and I mean today, Neil, also something pretty interesting for just the AI space, and obviously can benefit a lot of these AI companies. OpenAI is going to have a live stream in a few hours from now. Um, I forget what time it is going to be, but I think it's about maybe 3 hours from now. So one thing that really has me excited about the AI space is continued innovation. And the last month or so, Neil, I feel like the amount of growth and fights that not AMD, that OpenAI, that Gemini, that DeepSeek, that all these companies are doing is growing at rapid levels. And I do want to say a lot of this, probably at least for OpenAI and some of these other players, is because they're getting better TCO. And I mean, Blackwell just came out. Could that be just a pure coincidence that because Blackwell is now in these players are able to provide better solutions already at a lower cost? I mean, Neil, Amazon yesterday announced Alexa Plus, right? So I don't know if you heard that, but it's going to be, if you don't have Prime subscription, it's on I think a 19.99 per month. But it's going to be Alexa using Anthropic's AI model, and I forget what other AI model it's going to be using a bit. Um, but this is only possible. I mean, Amazon Alexa, I'm pretty sure I don't use it, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have some form of Alexa product. Um, and the amount of inferencing that you would need for something like this would be crazy if everybody is using it. Obviously, I don't think everybody's going to be using it. Um, but it's showing us that it we're moving more into the consumer based products for from a lot of these big tech players. And I think originally, Neil, they were worried that it would be too costly. Um, but if things get cheaper and cheaper, you're going to need a lot more inferencing overall.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it makes sense. I think Sundar also talked about that at an event, I think at the end of 2024, I think with Andrew Sorkin. Talking about the fact that in the next 12 months, things are going to evolve quite rapidly. Uh, AI agents, more memory based chats. Like, every time you now use any of the chats, not all of them. With ChatGPT, it's already much better, but sometimes have to repeat yourself again and again. And I think we're going to get, well, smoother, let's call it, user experience in the next couple of months, because things are moving at a super rapid pace with all of these AI products. And maybe that's what it needs, right? Because we've been hearing about AI PCs, AI this, AI that, but at the end of the day, does it make my life easier? How does this make my life easier? And with high personalization, I think that's how they achieve mass adoption.
Um, let's see here. Matthew Johnson. I know gaming sector is small for Nvidia, but it's almost seems like AMD can take a decent market share with the Nvidia 5000 series not getting good reviews. Um, I think in the gaming market, that's definitely going to be true, Neil. I think that now the 5000 series, though, is going to be getting the eyes of maybe more machine learners, engineers, of maybe more content creators, because you might not see huge improvements in gamings in frame per second unless you use kind of that frame generation system. I forget what they call it. Um, but you are definitely seeing a lot of gains because of that FP4 solution in video encoding in AI solutions. So it the gaming market, I feel, is no longer becoming that strong for the gaming space, but it is expanding into the content creators a lot more, into the engineers a lot more. So if they might be losing there, I think they're going to be gaining it somewhere else.
Um, yeah, I mean, I have to touch on this comment. Uh, so Neil is bearish on AMD, and against Jeremy's belief, I I own AMD. I mean, it would be funny. It would be funny if I own AMD and I'm bearish on it. No, I own AMD and I'm pretty bullish on the stock. So you must be mistaken me with another couch out there. Although I
I,
have the
I,
fanciest one.
I think he didn't grab your sarcasm. I think one earlier I asked something about AMD and you said no, I'm bearish on it
Ah,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Apologies. Maybe I should have like a sarcasm sign when I say these things. Um, Ariel Arbeto asking here about Grab. I know Grab has been grabbing a lot of attention in recent weeks. Before this is the dad joke royale here. Um, Before the earnings, like so much attention, and then boom, earnings, and then the stock drops 10% or so. It's a very interesting company, although I do think it was a bit overhyped for a couple of days because it was all over X, like all over the feed. I like the company. I've talked about this company, I think, in November. Um, Very good company, growing in a growing geography. It's a very interesting concept. Like in the West, we don't really have that many. Actually, we don't have any super apps. But in Asia, like in China, you have WeChat. Grab tries to be the Southeast Asian super app. Might work out, especially if eventually they do acquire GoTo, which would give them a bigger push in Indonesia and also in e-commerce. Definitely interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't follow it much, but it's definitely seems to be an interesting way to try to grab exposure and maybe a growing market in other parts outside of the United States. So I can definitely see the reason a lot of people might be bullish in this space. And I'm actually happy that if there was all this hype right before earnings, then earnings kind of pulled it down after that. So sometimes that eliminates maybe some of the hype that was priced in a little bit better. So it was it seems to maybe be at a better price entry than when that hype came in. But definitely seems to be like one of those. I don't know if I would call it high speculative, high risk, but it's one that I would feel you need to understand how that market is evolving to really be able to withstand the volatility. Because I'm gonna guess it's going to be a very volatile stock. So for volatile stocks, Neil, I feel like you need to understand that business really strongly because you these are the stocks that some people have extremely cans. If it drops 10%, they think their thesis is wrong. They sell out. And who knows, the next day it goes up another 15, 20%. You're like, oh, what did I miss out? So knowing these companies that are highly volatile and if they are a good portion of your portfolio, I mean, for anything, it's key. But I think with highly volatiles, that's even more crucial.
I mean, talking about volatile stocks, I think we have to talk about Tesla, right? Tesla under $300 right now. Blake saying that I am bearish on Tesla, although it is my number one holding. I'm not bearish on Tesla. I'm realistic. Like when this was trading at 430 or something like that, when it went basically doubled since the election, then went up after the earnings report, which, let's face it, was not a good one. I was profit taking and I set realistic expectations. And so far, I guess I am proven correct. Although, of course, I'm losing money because the stock is back under $300. But realistically speaking, it should not have traded at $400+. Like, it's much more appealing right now under 300 than it was before. Not bearish on Tesla's future, but when it was above 400, I've heard some crazy talk about the company, like, oh, they're going to launch this, they're going to launch that, it's going to take the whole market, etc., etc. Like, I've been a shareholder of Tesla for a while. I know you know the Tesla story with Elon Musk and all of that. Deadlines usually don't get met on time. Like, it happens, but usually takes a bit more. Usually takes a bit more time. And believe it or not, there is an Elon Musk politics effect on the stock right now as well, which is probably also why the stock is down a little bit. But I would still say that this is a very good company to own in the future. Energy, automotive, I mean, autonomous vehicles, robotics. So if you like these types of industries, Tesla is definitely a name to own. But yeah, I was skeptical on the stock price above 400, not bearish on the company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually am the same way for a lot of stocks that I own. I could be bearish in the short term, but bullish in the long term. And what I mean is I sometimes discuss it as being patient investors, where, for example, there were times when Nvidia a few quarters back was sitting at 150. And I personally said, I'm not trimming any positions, but I wouldn't be buying at these levels. And then we kind of get those opportunities where the stock dropped to 105, 115. And that's where I would say this is where the patient investors win. And very similar, I think that patient investors now, I feel like the market hasn't really moved on Nvidia for a long time. And the patient investors are going to be the winners when this stock breaks out, and everybody's going to be like, oh, I didn't hold it because it wasn't moving for 9 months. So I think it's great you can't be a perma bull in a company's valuation. Sometimes we've seen plenty of bubbles, and you have to detach emotions from investments. If not, you end up losing money.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, you can still be bullish on a company's future, but bearish on a short-term price action. I mean, I tweeted out something yesterday, like, if your thesis is based on something that might happen 20 years from now, then your thesis is BS. Like, you cannot tell me that you're buying a stock right now, because 20 years from now something might happen. Like, we don't even know what might happen 2-3 quarters from now, and you're telling me you're buying stuff because 20 years from now XYZ might happen. Not XYZ block, square, whatever, but XYZ the example. But yeah, with Tesla, I mean, it's always nice to hear Elon Musk talk about the $1 trillion of opportunities in the earnings calls. But again, usually when he talks about these things, it's either super long term, and it might also just not happen. Like the tens of trillions of dollars in potential revenue. Like, okay, cool, but let's dial it back a little bit and be a bit more realistic for the moment.
Neil, we had Jonathan here come in a bit late. He says, late here to live, but which Max 7 do you guys think look the most tempting to allocate right now?
I think we know
Jonathan,
the answer.
yeah, I think for me, because I already own such a big position of Nvidia, I'm going to say Google. If I didn't have a position in Nvidia, I think if I didn't have a position in Nvidia, Neil, I would, at these levels, I would try to get a 5% at least exposure into this company. I think it's at a 5% is great to be able to still benefit from gains, and kind of control some of the risk. But in forms of just pure valuations, I think Google is my favorite at the moment.
I +1. I agree. I think we keep talking about Google, and somehow the stock keeps coming down. So maybe we should stop talking about Google. But yeah, it's from the Max 7. It is definitely the most appealing right now, price wise and business wise as well, for sure.
I didn't know I was whispering. My little one is next door and is taking a nap, so I'm trying to be as quiet as possible.
There's Max here asking about SoFi, already answering the chat, but let me touch on that. Do you think there is a possible split or dividends in the long term? Dividends, to be honest, this is a company should only pay a dividend if it has way too much money and it doesn't know what to do with it after buybacks and after everything. So hopefully no dividends anytime soon. And a split, well, we're now at what, $14 or so. I mean, for them to consider a split, they'd have to be at 500 plus. So no split, no dividends. Still very bullish on the company, but any company that anytime I hear like someone talk about, oh, Amazon should issue a dividend, or when does Tesla issue a dividend, blah blah blah, I'm like, why? First buy back as many shares as possible, and then only talk about a dividend.
Yeah, I was hearing the same from like in Nvidia, lately. It's like, hey, could this stock just use all that cash for dividends? I would personally prefer not to. It might provide some short-term excitement, but I don't think it's best for the company. And I actually want to get this question. Sorry, not that one. This one from Scoops. Hey, Jose, what are some networking companies that Nvidia heavily relies on? So I don't know, Scoops, if you mean, because NVIDIA has a lot of their own networking solutions, like Spectrum X is one of them, and I forget the other one, Infinite Band. So I don't know if you mean what components NVIDIA uses to create its own core networking solutions. That I'm not too familiar with the supply chain. Next, if you're asking, because you can use NVIDIA's products with either their own networking solutions or kind of third-party networking solutions. Third-party networking solutions would be something like what Cosmic just mentioned, Arista. Arista does provide them, and whoever their competitors are. So for third parties, it's just whoever the market player leader is, and I'm not too familiar. For components, for their own core products, they don't really mention who's in that supply chain line. Yesterday they mentioned Cisco. So Cisco kind of does sell a lot of networking solutions, but they also sell a lot of third-party solutions as well. So now this NVIDIA mentions that their Spectrum X and Infinite Band are now going to be available through Cisco. So Cisco is like the middleman here, Scoops. So let's say you're trying to build an AI server or AI clusters. You would go to Cisco and try to look out some of these networking solutions. Now, one of the options that they are going to have there is going to be NVIDIA's core solution. So now, back then, one of the main ways you would only be able to buy these networking solutions was if you were buying these massive AI servers through NVIDIA directly or one of their server makers. Now it seems like they're expanding this networking solution to maybe make it more of a standard place. So Cisco would kind of be like that middleman that would allow more exposure to NVIDIA's Infinite Band and Spectrum X networking portfolio.
I have a question. Do you enjoy your Nvidia
Muted,
dividend
Neil.
am I still muted?
Maybe not. I think I had muted my headphones.
I was asking if you enjoy your Nvidia dividend of $0.01 per share.
Of course. I can't
Like,
wait till it goes to a cent and a half.
like every time I watch the cash thing and it's like, oh, we paid a dividend per share of $0.01. I'm like, wow, so generous, Jensen. Amazing. Stop paying a dividend and start buying studios so you can have a normal conference call. Like, it's really horrible. Like yesterday was probably one of the worst ones. Like every time Colette started to talk and like something interesting or Jensen said something interesting, cut. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah, it was weird because I was listening to. I also had a live transcript open, Neil, and the live transcript would sometimes bleep out, but some of the times it would still keep going. So I wonder if there were certain areas that were getting better traction, better response than others.
Interesting. I mean, sometimes the transcripts are funny because they don't always transcribed correctly. Like sometimes for Nebius, for example, if you go on their transcript and you look for Blackwell, sometimes you can't even find the word Blackwell because it's completely something else, like Blockwell or whatever. Quite funny. PayPal is now back into PayPal territory for sure. Like PayPal is now the Alibaba of before. Like this thing, great valuation, doesn't make any sense, super cheap, but it just doesn't move. Just doesn't move. Like they had their investor day, amazing investor day. I still have to make a little review video about that, but extremely undervalued, and it's basically an Alibaba. Doesn't move.
Sorry, Neil, I was reading through comments and just lost train of thought.
It's not great, Jose. Not great.
I mean, I'm not going. I just think, and I don't know why. I was reading a lot of Google. I just think Google is one of those stocks that is going to get a lot of hate right now, and I think it can definitely perform crazy. I've talked about it in the past. They're really good at building chips. Their TCU is amazing, and I think right now in the current era that we're in, it's all about capacity in the clouding space, and it's going to allow them to grow market share a lot quicker than the others. So if I, Google, the more I talk about it, I get the more excited, the more I really want it to become a massive position in my portfolio.
No, I agree. I think there is still like that trial or whatnot in April or in May, if I remember correctly, about the Chrome aspect that they launched last year. DOJ investigation? No, not DOJ. What is it called? FTC. So yeah, that might be one of the reasons why the stock has been a bit under pressure. But yeah, I don't think anything will happen with that. We have SoundHound reporting after hours, among other companies. What do you think? What do you think happens? I mean, the stock is already back under $10 now, which makes more sense than before, but still, in my eyes, a bit more expensive.
Did Nvidia sell out of this one, Neil?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, the market is weird. It's really weird. I'm not bullish in audio AI right now. I think SoundHounds are those stocks that have growth opportunities but high risk. There's a lot of competition in this space. So not one that I would own. But whatever I'm gonna guess with the stock, I think it would do the opposite. But after having it, I think it's down nearly, like you mentioned, nearly 50% from its year-to-date high. And going into earnings, maybe that's what you want to see. You want to see maybe not too much hype in the stock.
Yeah, but still, I mean, if they still grow their losses, margins are not going to go up. And now there's no Nvidia that's coming to save them, right? Because they're not in the 13F filings anymore. So yeah, I mean, we've been saying that for a while. We don't see a moat in that business. Although I know plenty of people think there is a moat, and the company thinks they have a moat. I just don't see a moat in that business.
Neil, I think they have a niche. I don't think they, right? I think, and I think there's a difference between having a niche and a moat. They've created this niche within the audio space, which maybe big players don't really want to enter because a niche space might not just make sense for them. They might just want to do kind of general audio. That niche is not necessarily a heavy moat. Obviously, they have some improvements and lead because if you choose a niche, you're able to advance a little bit faster than anybody else, especially anybody that's doing more general bases. But it's not something we've seen right now in the AI space that if you have more capacity, you'll be able to grow faster in whatever type of model. XAI did it perfect. It showed it perfectly that they've gotten to supposedly, I would differ, but supposedly close to OpenAI's models just because they had more capacity.
Yeah, agreed. We've reached the hour here. Are you looking at any specific companies tonight after the market closes, or is it your day off after a big one yesterday?
I think it's going to be my day off. If the only ones I would be more just SoundHound in general, even though I don't like the stock. I like listening to advancements in technologies. So just for more of the advancement there, and then Dell Technologies. Obviously, they're a big player in the AI space. So in the AI server space. So
Yeah.
I would those two just for more data points in this AI thesis of mine.
Okay, that makes sense.
You, Neil?
I have the local tonight after hours, personal holding. I really hope and Rocket Lab, yeah, Blake, thank you for the reminder. The local and Rocket Lab. I think Rocket Lab is going to be more about guidance. If Neutron is still on track or no, there was a stupid bear report that came out that really made zero sense. But yeah, it's all about Neutron launch dates and maybe new contracts that will move the stock, and D local it's about margins. If we are continuing, because last quarter margins were already better than expected. Let's see that continue, and I think I'll be happy. I'll be happy. So, yeah.
All right. I just want to say thanks to everybody. I mean, we had a nice amount of people today, Neil. As always, long-term investment. So days like today seem sucky, but at the end of the day, if you're a long-term investor, I'm pretty sure a year, 2 years from now, this is just going to be noise.
Agreed. I mean, if the neutron rocket is called Jimmy, that would be very funny. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, thanks all for joining. You'll see us again every Tuesday and Thursday. Hopefully by next time the markets are greener than today. And if not, well, it doesn't matter. We'll still be here. So anyways, thank you all for joining, and we'll have already a pretty early good weekend.